My wife lied about our savings being $50, $0, but secretly stole $200, $0 from our joint account to fund her affair with her boss. Now she's suing me for half the property, including our family home worth $850, $0, claiming I manipulated her through debt and betrayal. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about a wife who turned out to be nothing like I thought she was. Honestly, I thought I knew everything about Sarah, wife of 10 years. She was the kind of woman who always acted like she had it all together, classy, sharp-tongued when needed, and fiercely protective of her image. But in the end, all that was just a mask. The thing is, I caught her cheating on me in the most unexpected way, by accident really. It started with a simple bank statement review that turned into a complete nightmare. It was a random Tuesday afternoon when I decided to check our joint bank account, just to make sure everything was in order. Typical husband stuff, right? I'd been busy at work, stressed out, and wanted to see how we were doing financially. I was surprised to see a withdrawal of $200, zero just a few days earlier. My stomach sank. I mean, we had savings, sure, but I knew we weren't close to that amount. I knew we had around $50, $0 in total savings, maybe a little more, but not $200, $0. That money was supposed to be for the house, the kids' college fund, maybe a few vacations. But what I saw on that statement, it was a transfer to an unknown account, and it was done right around the time I caught her lying about something else. I looked deeper. I noticed a pattern, large withdrawals happening every week, always to different accounts, always under her name or her boss. There was a string of charges at fancy restaurants, hotels, and even some weird online transactions I'd never seen before. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. My mind raced. I remembered her telling me she'd only been earning a little extra from side jobs, nothing big. She insisted our savings were around $50, $0, maybe a bit more, but she always downplayed our finances, saying we didn't need to worry. But that day, I saw her lies for what they really were. She'd been stealing from us for months, maybe even years, and I could tell she'd been hiding something from me. I started to piece things together, her secret meetings, her phone always locked, her acting weird when I asked about her whereabouts. And then I remembered the strange calls she'd been getting lately, her snapping at her phone, rushing out the door without explanation. It all clicked. She'd been hiding a whole double life. The worst part, I'd never suspected a thing. I thought we had a good marriage, a normal life. I decided I needed answers. I confronted her that night, but I didn't just come out swinging. I played it cool at first, acting like I didn't know anything. When she got home, she was bitchy, more than usual actually. She snapped at me for asking about the bills, told me I was paranoid, that I was just stressed from work. But I knew better. I pulled out the bank statement and just laid it on the table. Her face froze, and for a second I saw the panic in her eyes. That's when she started to spin her web of lies. She told me she was planning a surprise for me, that all those charges were for a special project she'd been working on. Said she needed the money to fund some secret business venture. Yeah, right, I didn't buy it. I knew she was cheating. I knew she'd been screwing her boss, a guy named Mark, her boss, her lover, her secret. And as I stared at her trying to deny everything, I felt a mixture of anger, betrayal, and heartbreak. My wife, the woman I loved, was out there lying, stealing, and probably having sex with her boss. It was a punch to the gut. I felt like I'd been living in a bubble and it just burst. I wanted to scream, to yell at her, to demand she confess everything. But I stayed quiet, watching her squirm, knowing this was only the beginning of what was about to come. After that night, everything changed. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat. The image of her lying there, stubbornly denying everything, kept replaying in my mind. I felt like I'd been hit by a freight train. How could she do this? How could she lie about the money, about her feelings, about everything we built? I kept asking myself if I missed the signs, if I was blind to what was happening right under my nose. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how deep her deception ran. The next day, I started digging into the bank details more. I pulled up every transaction I could find, cross-referenced them with her phone records, her emails, even her social media activity. It was like peeling back layers of a lie's onion. and what I found was shocking. There were receipts for hotel stays, luxury dinners, gifts, all paid for with that stolen money. She'd been flaunting her affair right in front of me, or at least that's how it seemed. She was careless, arrogant, even like she thought she could get away with it forever. I also noticed her behavior changing. She became more aggressive, more dismissive. When I asked about her whereabouts, she'd lash out, accuse me of paranoia or being controlling. She'd call me insecure, say I was just jealous because I didn't have a clue what she was doing. That's when I realized she'd been planning her escape, her betrayal, for a long time. She'd been setting the stage for her new life with Mark, her boss, while pretending everything was fine. I felt stupid for not seeing it sooner, but at the same time I was furious at myself for trusting her so blindly. The emotional toll was brutal. I kept asking myself, how did I miss the signs? Was I that bad of a husband? Did I fail her somehow? Or was she just a lying, manipulative bitch who used me? The anger boiled inside me, at her, at myself, at the whole damn situation. I couldn't believe I'd been played so easily. For years, I worked my ass off to give her a good life, and she was out there screwing her boss and draining our savings. It was like a kick in the nuts every time I thought about the money she stole. 200, more than I'd ever seen in one place. That money was supposed to secure our future, and now it was gone, flushed down her greed and her lies. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just sit around and let her keep lying, keep stealing. I started to craft a plan, one that would expose her for who she truly was and, hopefully, get some measure of justice. I decided to gather all the evidence, document everything: bank statements, texts, emails, anything that would prove her deception. I also reached out to a lawyer friend of mine just to get an idea of where I stood legally. The property, the house, everything we owned was in her name too. She was claiming I manipulated her through debt and betrayal, trying to turn the tables on me. That made me laugh bitterly. She's the one who manipulated me, who lied, who stole from me, not the other way around. I remember the moment I finally confronted her again, this time with proof in hand. I told her I knew everything. Her face twisted in anger, then panic. She yelled, called me names, accused me of being a jealous, insecure asshole. She threw out accusations about me cheating, about how I was controlling her, how I'd manipulated her into staying with me all these years. It was classic gaslighting, but I wasn't buying it anymore. I told her I wanted a divorce, I wanted her out of the house, and I wanted her to face the consequences of what she'd done. That's when she started crying, fake tears streaming down her face, begging me to forgive her, saying she loved me, that she'd change, but I knew better. I knew she was just trying to spin her web to keep her grip on what she'd stolen. That night I couldn't sleep again. I kept replaying everything, the lies, the betrayal, the stolen money. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind, so trusting. I felt crushed, betrayed, like I'd lost my best friend. But underneath all that, I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I realized I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. I had to face the truth, no matter how ugly it was. And the truth was, my wife, my supposed partner, had been cheating, lying, and stealing from me for a long time. I was hurt, but I also knew I had to take control of my life again. I wasn't going to let her ruin me, not without a fight. The days that followed were a blur of legal consultations, financial chaos, and emotional exhaustion. I spent hours poring over every document I could find, trying to understand exactly how deep her betrayal went. The money she stole, 200, was gone, and I had no idea where she'd hidden it or spent it. She kept insisting she was innocent, that she was just trying to save her marriage by lying about the savings, but I knew better. That amount of money doesn't just disappear without a trace, especially not when it's used to fund an affair with her boss, Mark. I started to see the full scope of her deception. She'd been lying about her income, about her savings, about her intentions. She told me she wanted to buy a new car, go on a vacation, maybe even start a small online business. But all the while, she was funneling money into secret accounts, probably to set herself up for a new life with Mark. I also discovered she'd been secretly paying for her hotel stays, her fancy dinners, even gifts for him, all with our stolen money. It was like she'd built a whole shadow life while I was left in the dark. The worst part, she had the audacity to accuse me of manipulating her, of controlling her through debt and betrayal. She painted herself as the victim, saying I was the one who pushed her into cheating, who made her feel trapped. That was rich coming from her. She's the one who lied about the money, who secretly stole from us, who had sex with her boss behind my back. I couldn't believe her nerve. She acted like she was the innocent one, the one wronged in all this, but I knew better. I had proof now, screenshots of her texts with Mark, receipts for the money she stole, bank statements showing the transfers. I decided to confront her again. This time I laid everything out plainly. I told her I knew about her affair, about the stolen money, about her lies. I told her I was done. I said I wanted a divorce and I wanted her out of the house immediately. She started crying again, fake tears, the kind she used to manipulate me when she wanted something. She begged me to forgive her, said she loved me, that she'd change, but I wasn't buying it. I told her she was a liar and a thief, that I wasn't going to let her destroy what we had left. I called my lawyer, set up a meeting, and prepared to take legal action. The thing is, I wasn't just angry, I was hurt. Betrayal cuts deep, especially when it's from someone you trusted with your life. I kept asking myself, how could she do this? How could she betray our entire marriage for some fleeting affair and a pile of stolen cash? It made me question everything I thought I knew about her, about us. I felt like I was living in some nightmare where the woman I loved was a total stranger, someone capable of lying, stealing, and cheating without remorse. And yet, amidst all the chaos, I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I realized that I needed to protect myself, not just legally but emotionally. I couldn't let her manipulate me anymore. I had to take control of my life, even if it meant starting over. I decided to document everything, the evidence of her affair, the stolen money, her manipulative lies. I knew that in the end the truth would come out. That was the only way I could get through this, by facing it head on, no matter how ugly it was. I was done being the victim in her game. It was time to take back what was mine, one way or another. The legal process moved quickly once I handed over all the evidence. I filed for divorce and I made it clear I wanted full custody of the kids, if she even deserved the privilege anymore. The property was a sticking point. Our house, that $850, $0 family home, was in her name, but I had my name on the mortgage. I knew she was claiming I manipulated her into debt, but the truth was, she'd been reckless with money long before I even suspected her affair. She'd always been a spender, but now I saw the full scope. She'd drained our savings, used our credit cards to fund her secret life, and was planning to leave me with nothing. Her lawyer tried to spin it that I was controlling and manipulative, that I'd groomed her into feeling trapped, but I just sat there listening. I had the receipts, the bank statements, the texts. I had enough to prove she'd stolen and lied. I even had a witness, her boss Mark, who confirmed they'd been having sex and that he'd helped her transfer the money. That was the nail in her coffin. Meanwhile, she was still trying to gaslight me, claiming I manipulated her into debt, saying I'd made her feel insecure so she'd cheat. That was her go-to excuse. She insisted that the affair was my fault, that I'd driven her into Mark's arms because I was controlling and abusive. I almost laughed. I'm not perfect, but I never hit her, never raised my voice. Yet she spun it that I was the villain. Honestly, I think she enjoyed the power she had over me, the way she could lie and manipulate, and I was starting to see that she'd always been like this, just better at hiding it. The court hearings were tense. She showed up in her designer clothes, acting like the innocent victim, crying fake tears and claiming she was misunderstood. I sat there, seething, knowing the truth was on my side. I explained how she'd lied about our savings, how she'd stolen from us to fund her affair, and how she'd been planning her escape for months. I demanded her to be held accountable, to return the stolen money, and to give me full custody of the kids. The judge listened, and I could see the wheels turning. I could tell she was trying to manipulate the court, but I had enough evidence to shut her down. As the proceedings dragged on, I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. I was finally standing up for myself, exposing her for what she truly was, but inside I was broken. I loved her once. I thought she loved me too. Now I saw her for what she was, a liar, a thief, a cheat. The house, the property, everything was at stake. I knew she wanted half, claiming I manipulated her into debt and betrayed her, but I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I had the proof, and I was prepared to fight for what was rightfully mine. The day the judge finally made his ruling, I felt a sense of closure. She would have to leave the house, give up any claim to the property, and face the consequences of her actions. She was furious, screaming, crying, throwing accusations, but I stayed calm. I knew I'd done everything by the book. I'd uncovered her lies, documented her betrayal, and fought for my rights. That house, our home, the life I worked so hard to build, she was trying to take it all, but I wasn't going to let her. Not without a fight. And as she stormed out, still yelling about manipulation and betrayal, I realized something. I had been a fool to trust her so blindly, but I also knew I was stronger now. I'd survived her lies, her theft, her betrayal, and I was going to rebuild my life without her. This was the end of her reign of deception and the beginning of my new chapter. The aftermath hit me harder than I expected. Once she was out of the house, I felt this strange mix of relief and emptiness. The house, the life we built, suddenly felt so hollow without her presence. I'd spent years trusting her, believing her lies, and now I was left to pick up the pieces. The court ruling was final, but the emotional scars lingered. I knew she was furious, claiming I manipulated her into debt, that I somehow forced her into this mess. But I had all the evidence, texts, bank statements, witness statements from her boss, Mark, that proved otherwise. The real shock came when I started going through the financial documents she'd hidden. It was shocking how much she'd stolen, more than I even realized at first. That $200, $0 was just the tip of the iceberg. There were more transfers, more secret accounts, and even some investments she'd made without telling me. She'd been planning her escape for months, maybe longer. It was like I'd been living with a stranger all along, someone capable of lying to my face and taking my life savings. I also learned that she had been secretly talking to lawyers, trying to threaten me into giving her half the property. She claimed I manipulated her through debt, that I made her feel insecure so she could cheat and steal. That was her favorite line: blame me, twist everything around. But I knew the truth now. I knew she'd been manipulating, lying, and cheating from the start. Her tears, her pleas, they were just part of her game. I refused to be her pawn anymore. I decided to cut all contact with her. I blocked her on everything: her phone, social media, email. I didn't want to hear her lies or see her fake tears anymore. I focused on rebuilding my life, on making sure the kids were okay. They didn't know the full extent of what had happened, but I made sure they felt loved and safe. I got a new job, started therapy, and slowly began to piece myself back together. But every now and then I'd catch myself staring at that empty house, remembering how I'd been betrayed by someone I thought loved me. The biggest lesson I learned: trust is fragile and you can't ignore the red flags. I was naive to think everything was perfect. In the end, the betrayal wasn't just about money, it was about her character, her integrity. I realize now I should pay more attention to her actions, not just her words. I also learned that sometimes the people closest to you can hurt you the most. But I also learned I'm stronger than I thought. I survived her lies, her theft, her betrayal, and I'm determined to move forward even if it's one step at a time. Looking back, I wish I'd seen the signs earlier, but I also know I can't change the past. All I can do now is protect myself, stay vigilant, and make sure I don't get again. I want to warn anyone out there: trust your instincts, check the details, and don't ignore those little red flags. Because if I'd paid attention sooner, maybe I could save myself from all this pain. But at least now I know the truth. And that's the first step to healing. In the end, I realized that the most painful part wasn't just losing the money or the house. It was losing the illusion of the life I thought we had. I always believed in honesty, loyalty, and the idea that marriage was built on trust. But she shattered all of that with her lies, her stealing, her sex with Mark, and her manipulative ways. It took me months to accept that she was never the person I thought she was. That realization hit hard, but it also set me free. I've learned that people are capable of hiding their true selves very well, and sometimes the ones closest to you are the ones who hurt you the most. I trusted her with everything, my love, my money, my future, and she used that trust against me. What hurts the most is knowing she never truly loved me. She only loved the idea of what we had or what she thought she could get from me in the end. That's a bitter pill to swallow. Now I'm focused on rebuilding my life. The house is gone, the money is gone, but I still have my kids, my sanity, and my dignity. I've learned to be more cautious, more aware, and most importantly, more self-reliant. I don't want to be the guy who gets again. I want to be the guy who learns from his mistakes and moves forward stronger. Looking back, I see my story as a cautionary tale. Don't ignore the small signs, they often lead to the big betrayals. Trust is earned, not given blindly. And if someone is hiding things, if they're secretive or evasive, it's worth digging deeper. Because the truth always comes out. Sometimes painfully, sometimes ugly, but it's better to face it than live in denial. To anyone out there feeling betrayed or hurt, remember you're not alone. It's okay to feel broken, but don't let that break define you. Use it as fuel to rebuild what's yours and to protect yourself from future pain. I may have lost a lot, but I gained clarity. I found strength I didn't know I had. And I know now that the only person responsible for my happiness is me, no one else. I hope my story serves as a warning but also as a reminder. Never settle for lies, never ignore red flags, and always trust your gut, because sometimes the biggest betrayals come from those you love the most, and when they do, you have to decide whether to let them break you or to rise above. I chose to rise, and I'm finally beginning to see a future where I can trust again, just not her, not anymore.